It was a calm Saturday morning on Interstate 95, the kind of day when the sun made everything shimmer, even the dusty rest stops. At a small roadside cafe, Marcus Bennett, a tall black man in his mid-40s, quietly stepped out of his Tesla. He was dressed casually, wearing jeans, a navy jacket, and glasses that gave him the calm, composed look of a teacher, or maybe a professor. Few would guess that this quiet man was actually Judge Marcus Bennett, one of the most respected federal judges in the state of Virginia. He had been driving back from a legal conference in Washington, D.C., reflecting on a speech he gave about bias in law enforcement. Ironically, Kay was about to give him a harsh reminder of exactly what he'd been talking about. As Marcus walked into the Rest Stop Cafe, he noticed two police officers by the counter, Officer Daniels and Sergeant Miller. They were laughing over coffee, their badges gleaming under the fluorescent lights. Marcus nodded politely, but when he approached the register, Daniels' eyes narrowed. "Can I help you, sir?" the cashier asked. Marcus smiled. "Just a black coffee, please." Before he could pay, Daniels stepped closer. "Kay, you drive that black Tesla outside?" Marcus nodded slowly. "I do." Daniels smirked. "Mind telling me how you can afford that car?" Cathay went silent. Everyone turned. Marcus stayed calm, sensing where this was headed. "I'm on my way home from work," he said, his tone polite but firm. "Work?" Miller interrupted. "What kind of work pays for $100 grand ride? You dealing something?" Marcus took a slow breath. He'd handled hundreds of cases like this, just never from this side of the badge. "I think you should be careful with that accusation, officer," he said, quietly. That calmness, that refusal to submit, irritated them even more. Moments later, the officers ordered him to step outside. They claimed they had received a report of a stolen Tesla matching his description. Marcus, knowing his rights, still complied to avoid escalation. Outside, Miller barked, "Hands where I can see them." Marcus lifted his hands, the same hands that had signed countless judicial orders defending justice. Daniels walked around the car, radioing in the plates, but he wasn't waiting for confirmation. "You fit the description," he said, approaching Marcus. "Turn around." Marcus spoke evenly. "Officer, my name is Marcus Bennett. If you'll just..." But before he could finish, cold metal cuffs clicked around his wrists. People in the parking lot stopped and stared, recorded on their phones. A woman whispered, "Why are they arresting him? He didn't do anything." Marcus stood still, heart pounding, not from fear, but disbelief. Daniels muttered, "You people always think you're smarter than us." Marcus looked him in the eye. "No, officer. I just believe in the law." Minutes later, a second police cruiser arrived, this time with Lieutenant Harris, an older black officer who immediately sensed something was wrong. He approached the scene and frowned. "What's going on here?" Daniels shrugged. "Caught this guy driving a stolen Tesla? Wouldn't show ID?" Marcus turned to Harris calmly. "Lieutenant, if you check my wallet, you'll find my identification and a judicial badge." Harris hesitated, pulled out Marcus's wallet, and froze when he saw the credentials. "Wait a second," he muttered. "This man's a federal judge." Daniels laughed nervously. "You're right." Harris held up the ID. "Judge Marcus Bennett, U.S. District Court, Richmond." Silence. Then, all at once, Daniels' face turned pale. Miller looked like he wanted to disappear. Marcus's voice was quiet but sharp. "Now that you've confirmed who I am, perhaps you should remove these cuffs." Harris immediately did, apologizing profusely. Daniels tried to explain. "Sir, we were just following procedure." But Marcus interrupted. "Your procedure was profiling. Seen it too many times from behind the bench. Today, I experienced it firsthand." Back at his car, Marcus sat quietly for a moment, rubbing his wrists where the cuffs had left faint marks. Harris approached again, looking ashamed. "Sir, I'm deeply sorry. I'll make sure this is reported properly." Marcus looked up. "Lieutenant, I don't want revenge. I want change. If this can happen to me, a judge, imagine what happens to those who don't have a title." He drove away, his Tesla gliding down the highway as his reflection shimmered on the windshield, calm but deeply unsettled. 3 weeks later, fate spun full circle. Marcus took his seat at the bench in his courtroom. The next case on the docket, State of Virginia versus Officers Daniels and Miller, charged with unlawful detention and misconduct following a civilian complaint filed by an observer at that rest stop. When the defendants entered and saw who the presiding judge was, their jaws dropped. Daniels whispered, "You've got to be kidding me." Marcus looked down at them, completely composed. "This court will maintain professionalism," he said. "And yes, officers, I will recuse myself from sentencing, but not before ensuring justice is served." The courtroom was silent. The irony was undeniable. The same men who mocked him for being too black to own a Tesla were now standing before him in chains of their own making, not physical ones, but legal and moral ones. Weeks later, after the disciplinary board concluded, both officers were suspended and required to attend racial bias training. The case made national headlines. Social media exploded with outrage and reflection. Marcus gave one final interview. Standing outside the courthouse, he spoke to reporters calmly. "This isn't about me," he said. "It's about what happens every day to people without power. I was lucky. My title protected me. But justice isn't supposed to depend on titles." He paused, looking straight into the camera. "When those sworn to uphold the law forget what it means to respect it, the whole system breaks. That's why stories like this matter, because silence is what keeps injustice alive." The screen fades to black as his Tesla drives into the distance. Soft music plays. Voiceover. Sometimes life gives us power not to punish, but to remind others what justice truly means. On screen, text. Judge Marcus Bennett's story reminds us, respect has no color. Justice has no bias.